I had no support, no money, no path, but who was the unknown mentor who guided me when everyone I loved turned away? I stood at the funeral of a man I had never actually met, crying harder than I ever did for people I had known my entire life. It's a strange thing to realize that the person who saved your soul was a stranger living 4,000 miles away, while the people who shared your blood were the ones who almost drowned you. My name is Leo, and at 28, I am a lead architect at a firm that is reshaping the skyline of this city, but 6 years ago, I was sweeping the floors of a gym, convinced that my life was already over. To understand why a stranger became my father figure, you have to understand the emptiness of the house I grew up in. My father, David, 56, was a man who believed that life was a hierarchy, and unfortunately, I was at the bottom of it. He worked hard at a mill, but his pride was entirely invested in my older brother, Julian, 31. Julian was the star. He was the high school quarterback, the prom king, the guy with the $1 million smile and the 10-cent work ethic. My mother, Elena, 54, was his enabler-in-chief. She treated Julian's failures like tragic accidents and my successes like inconveniences. I was the other one, the quiet one. I didn't play sports, I drew. I didn't want to be loud, I wanted to build. I spent my teenage years filling sketchbooks with designs for buildings that defied gravity, intricate bridges, and houses that caught the light in impossible ways. To my parents, these were doodles. To me, they were blueprints for an escape. The dynamic in our house was suffocating. If the fridge broke, it was my job to fix it because I was handy. If Julian crashed his car, the family savings were drained to bail him out because he needed a fresh start. I watched my parents pour their retirement, their equity, and their energy into a black hole of a brother who never gave anything back. I was working night shifts as a janitor at a local gym just to pay for drafting paper and pencils, and even then, I had to hide my money. If Elena knew I had cash, she would guilt me into giving it up for the family pot, which was really just the Julian pot. Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own home, screaming at the top of your lungs while everyone looks right through you? I was 22 when I hit my lowest point. I had applied to architecture school, but without financial support, I couldn't go. My portfolio was rejected by local firms because I didn't have a degree. I felt like I was trapped in a glass box, clawing at the walls. One night, sitting in the cold glow of my laptop screen in the corner of the kitchen, I found an obscure online forum for architectural design. It wasn't social media, it was a serious place where professionals critiqued work. I created an anonymous account. I didn't use my name. I just called myself Draftsman_01. I uploaded a scan of a cathedral concept I had been working on for 3 months. I expected silence, or worse, ridicule. Instead, I got a notification 3 hours later. It was a comment from a user named _Foundry. The comment wasn't a compliment. It was a critique, but it wasn't mean, it was surgical. He pointed out that my load-bearing arches were structurally unsound, but he also said that my understanding of light and shadow was prodigious. He didn't treat me like a kid. He treated me like an architect who needed to learn physics. I replied, defending my choice. He replied back with a sketch correcting my math. We argued about Gothic revivalism until 4 a.m. For the first time in my life, someone was actually seeing my mind. Over the next 6 months, the _Foundry became my obsession. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know if he was 20 or 80. I didn't know if he was a man or a woman. I just knew that he demanded excellence. Meanwhile, my real life was collapsing. Julian had gotten involved in a pyramid scheme and had convinced my parents to remortgage the house. When the scheme imploded, the bank came calling. The stress in the house was toxic. David was drinking, Elena was crying, and I was the punching bag. They blamed me for not working more hours, for not contributing more to the disaster they created. I was scrubbing the locker room showers at the gym, smelling of bleach and despair, when my phone buzzed. It was a private message from the _Foundry. I have a client looking for a concept sketch for a private library. I showed him your cathedral study. He wants to buy a print of it. He's offering $500. $500. To my parents, that was a week of groceries. To me, it was validation. It was the first time my art had value. I accepted. The money was transferred via a secure link. I bought a better laptop. I bought professional software. When I told my parents I had sold a drawing, they didn't congratulate me. David asked if I could get more so we could pay the electric bill. They didn't care about the craft, they only cared about the utility. That was the moment my heart hardened. I realized I couldn't save them if I was drowning with them. What would you do? Would you give your first earnings to the family that ignored you, or would you invest it in the only path that could get you out? The relationship with the _Foundry deepened. He started giving me assignments. Design a bridge using only tension cables. Redesign a brutalist apartment complex to be human-centric. I worked on these projects every night from midnight to dawn. He ripped my work apart, and I loved him for it. He taught me discipline. He taught me that passion without structure is just chaos. One night, I confessed to him that I couldn't afford school. I told him about the janitor job. I told him about my brother. I broke the rule of anonymity because I was lonely. He didn't reply for 2 days. I thought I had scared him off. I thought I had been too unprofessional. Then, a message appeared. It was long. He told me that he had watched talent rot in bad environments before. He told me that the only way to build a skyscraper is to dig a deep foundation, and sometimes that means digging through dirt. He offered me a deal. He would pay for my tuition at an online accredited program if, and only if, I maintained a 4.0 GPA and sent him every single assignment for review before I submitted it. I stared at the screen, tears blurring the text. This stranger was offering me a future. My own father wouldn't even offer me a ride to work. I accepted. For the next 4 years, I lived 2 lives. To my family, I was still Leo the loser. I kept my gym job to pay my share of the rent and keep up appearances. I endured their snide comments. I watched Julian crash 2 more cars. I watched the house slowly fall into disrepair. But in my room, I was flying. I was acing my classes. The underscore foundry was a harsh taskmaster. If I got an A-, he wanted to know why. He sent me books. Rare, first edition books on design theory, mailed to a P.O. box so my parents wouldn't see them. He became my father. I didn't know his voice, but I knew his mind. He taught me ethics. He taught me that an architect has a responsibility to the people who live in the walls he builds. He taught me that resilience is a design choice. By the time I graduated, I had a portfolio that was better than students from Ivy League schools. I had real-world freelance experience, brokered through the underscore foundry's contacts. Then came the day I moved out. I had saved enough from the freelance work to get my own apartment. I packed my bags while my parents were watching TV. When I walked into the living room and put my key on the table, David didn't even look up. "I'm leaving," I said. "You'll be back." Julian laughed from the recliner. "You can't make it out there." "I already have," I said. And I walked out. Is it better to leave quietly and let your success be the noise, or do you feel the need to prove people wrong to their faces? My career exploded. With my degree and my portfolio, I got hired as a junior associate at a top firm in the city. I worked harder than anyone else because I had been training for this for years. I moved up the ranks. I bought a new car. I bought a condo. I sent money home to my parents, anonymously. I couldn't bear to let them starve, but I couldn't bear to talk to them either. But as my star rose, the underscore foundry went silent. His messages became shorter. The critiques stopped. He stopped logging in. I sent message after message. "Are you okay? I got the promotion. I wish you could see the project I'm leading." Radio silence. For 6 months, I felt a panic I hadn't felt since I was a teenager. I realized that I had built my entire identity around the approval of a username. I was terrified that he had abandoned me, just like everyone else. Then, the letter arrived at my office. Tea was thick, creamy paper with a wax seal. It was from a law firm in London, Harrow, Finch & Associates. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Dear Mr. Leo Vance," it began. "It is with great sorrow that we inform you of the passing of our client, Mr. Elias Thorne." I stopped breathing. Elias Thorne. The name was legendary. He was one of the greatest modernist architects of the 20th century. He was a man whose textbooks I had studied. He was a recluse who had vanished from the public eye 15 years ago. The letter continued. "Mr. Thorne left strict instructions that upon his death, you were to be contacted. He has left you his personal library, his drafting tools, and the remainder of his private estate, pending a meeting at our offices." I flew to London the next day. I sat in a mahogany-paneled office across from a solicitor who handed me a box. Inside was a stack of journals and a letter addressed to Draftsman_01. I opened the letter, and there, in shaky handwriting, was the voice I knew better than my own. "Leo, if you are reading this, the structural failure of this old body has finally occurred. Do not mourn the building. It stood for 82 years. You have likely wondered why a man you never met spent 6 years criticizing your roof pitches. The truth is simple. I saw myself in you. I saw a boy who had the fire but no fireplace to contain it. I knew that if you were left in that environment, the cold would put you out. I had a son once. He was much like your brother. I gave him everything, money, access, ease. And it destroyed him. He died of an overdose 10 years ago. I spent the last decade of my life wondering if I could have saved him if I had given him less money and more purpose. When I found you, I decided to try again. I couldn't be a father who coddled. So I became a mentor who challenged. I wanted to see if you could build yourself if I just gave you the tools. You did. You were the architect of your own life, Leo. I just held the flashlight. Everything I have is yours. Build something that lasts. Elias. That brings me back to the cemetery. I stood by his grave, a simple stone marker that just said, Builder. I cried for the loss of him, but I also cried for the relief of the truth. I wasn't unlovable. I wasn't unworthy. I just had the wrong audience. My family couldn't see me because they were looking for something small enough to fit in their box. Elias saw me because he was looking for someone big enough to fill the sky. I returned home a changed man. I'm wealthy now, not just from my job, but from Elias's inheritance. But the money matters less than the tools. I have his drafting compass on my desk. Every time I use it, I feel his hand guiding mine. I went to see my parents last week. I drove up in my car. I walked into the house. It smelled of mildew and regret. Julian was on the couch, getting older than his years. David looked small. They asked me for money within 5 minutes. I looked at them, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. They were stuck in a building that was collapsing, and they refused to leave. I can't give you money, I said gently. But if you want a job, Julian, I know a contractor who needs laborers. It's hard work. It pays minimum wage, but it's a start. Julian sneered. I'm not digging ditches. Then I can't help you, I said. I walked out. I didn't look back. I realized that Elias was right. You can't build a life for someone else. You can only give them the blueprints. It's up to them to pick up the hammer. I am Leo, the architect. And I finally know who built me. It wasn't the people who raised me. It was the stranger who raised my standards. What do you think? Is family defined by blood, or by the people who provide the support you need to survive? And if you were in my shoes, would you share your inheritance with the family that ignored you? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to help us tell more stories of hidden resilience. Let's keep building.